Hey everyone, just a quick heads up, due to how brutal this past month has been outside of YouTube, Battle Network 3 is going to need more time in the oven before I can upload it. So I'm going to be uploading this one instead. This video is pretty old, so I apologize for the lower audio quality and the dated script. Anyway, let's not delay this show any further. Enjoy! I want to take a quick moment to talk about Sonic Spinball. There really isn't too much to say about this one since you're overall playing a pinball game with Sonic elements. Sure, you can run, jump, and spin dash just like in the regular games, but the amount of time you spend doing any real platforming is very little. You'll be suspended in the air most of the time, guiding Sonic to the Chaos Emeralds with the use of flippers, bumpers, geometry, and a little RNG. Once you've collected the Chaos Emerald, you'll have a showdown against Robotnik and move on to the next stage once he's defeated. There are 4 levels in total, and there's also a bonus stage that includes cameo appearances from the Sonic Satum cartoon. This is also the only game they'll ever appear in. It does make for a nice distraction, and if you ever need more pinball action in your Sonic game, look no further. Now before we begin the main event, I just want to point out that from here on, I will be referring to both games as Sonic 3K since both games were intended to be one whole game to begin with, and saying Sonic 3 and Knuckles repeatedly is too big of a mouthful to do that. The only time I will not be referring to this game as Sonic 3K is when I'm talking about the games as if they are separated from each other. At that point, I'll just be going by their regular names Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. Anyway, let's begin. When Sonic 3 first came out, they were released as separate games, Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. They were originally intended to be a full game in one cartridge, wanting to end their first Sonic trilogy with a bang, but due to the ROM size being far too big for the cartridge space back then, they had no choice but to split the games up. Because the developers wanted the players to experience the full game the way it was intended to be, Sonic and Knuckles was made with a lock slot, which allowed both of the games to be played as a complete package. So now that we're done with that history lesson, let's get right down to the story. Right after the events of Sonic 2, Sonic and Tails fly off to Angel Island where Robotnik's fortress has crashed. As Sonic goes super and flies right into Angel Island, Knuckles greets him with a Shoryuken so hard, he knocked the super right out of him. Then he proceeds to steal all of the Chaos Emeralds and runs off. Who is Knuckles anyway? He is Angel Island's guardian and the last echidna on the planet, tasked with keeping the Master Emerald safe. We find out later that he was tricked by Robotnik, believing that Sonic is here to steal the Master Emerald for himself. So throughout Sonic's mission to pursue Robotnik, Knuckles is always around to get in the way, which buys Robotnik enough time to repair the Death Egg. After defeating the mad scientist, the Death Egg crashes right back onto Angel Island and Sonic proceeds to seek out the Doctor so he can put a stop to his shenanigans, but not without Knuckles getting in the Hedgehog's way again. It's not until the end of Sonic's story where Knuckles realizes that he's being tricked the whole time when he finds Robotnik stealing the Master Emerald and sending a nasty shock to his system. At this point, he proceeds to work with Sonic by helping him infiltrate the Death Egg and take the fight to Robotnik on his own turf. After Sonic wipes the floor with him in his super form, they return the Master Emerald to Angel Island, leaving Knuckles to guard it once more. Soon after Robotnik's defeat, Knuckles is in pursuit of an egg robo who attacked him while he was chilling on Mushroom Hill. The pursuit comes to an end when they reach Sky Sanctuary, and before Knuckles could throw any hands, Mecha Sonic shows up to ambush him, destroying the egg robo in the process. He then uses the Master Emerald to power himself up, similar to Sonic when he uses the Chaos Emerald, and the fight begins. After Knuckles destroys him, he takes the Master Emerald back to where it belongs with the help of Sonic and Tails, and Angel Island's levitation powers are restored. What I really like about this story is that it's the first game in its series to have quite the lengthy tale that is interconnected between its characters, which is something we'll get to see more often in the Adventure series. Now of course, with a story that lengthy, this game also includes many different endings that you can acquire depending on a couple of factors: which character you're playing as, whether or not you've collected the Chaos Emeralds, or if you've collected the Super Emeralds, a collectible that I will bring up later on. With that being said, I'm pretty sure there is a total of 9 different endings you can acquire, and if I were to show them all off, we'd be here for a while. But now let's talk about the game itself. At first, you are given the option to play as Sonic and Tails as a duo, Sonic solo, Tails solo, and Knuckles. Playing as Sonic and Tails as a duo is now encouraged in this game compared to its last, since all the issues he had were removed in this one. Plus, the second player has the ability to carry Sonic if he happens to jump with Tails while he's flying. And yes, you heard that correctly, Tails can now fly in this game for about 8 seconds, something he couldn't do before. In addition to this, Tails can also swim underwater for a short period of time. So now the player has a better incentive to play Tails this time around, his flight ability making him the easiest character of the trio. Sonic himself is not without any new abilities in this one. Now he has this new move called the Insta Shield, which creates a flash of wind around him for a split second anytime the jump button is pressed while he's in midair. This Insta Shield lets him hit batnicks, break boxes from a slightly longer distance, and he can use it to destroy certain projectiles with perfect timing. The only time he can't use his Insta Shield ability is anytime he has a power-up active, with the exception of the speed up shoes. This is due to the fact that all the power-ups in this game, more so the elemental shields, will give him a different ability, something else I will talk about once I get to them. Then there's Knuckles, the newest character to join the roster. Knuckles can't jump as high as the other two, but to make up for it, he's able to glide and climb on walls. Because of Knuckles' strength, he's also able to access passages that Sonic and Tails wouldn't have access to, since he can smash right through those obstacles. This often leads to Knuckles taking a different route to clear his stages, offering not only a new playstyle, but also a brand new experience as a whole. There are even 3 zones in Knuckles' story where you don't even fight bosses at the end of Act 2, since the capsule is unguarded. Makes sense considering the fact that in his campaign, Robotnik is defeated. Also, I can't be the only one who sees a psychotic look in Knuckles' eyes whenever he does his victory pose. I mean, look at the guy, he's staring right into your soul. You mainly want to play as Knuckles if you enjoy heavy exploration, which is what he's all about. I should mention that he is also the hardest character to play as due to his jump height, and also because certain bosses are altered when Knuckles encounters them. A good example of this is the Hangmobile and Flying Battery. Robotnik will fire his flamethrower at Sonic and Tails only if the player jumps over him, whereas with Knuckles, the flamethrower will be fired in a set pattern regardless of whether or not the player makes the jump. Much like all the other Sonic games we've talked about up to this point, the main goal that the player has to accomplish is to get the character from point A to point B, beat the big bad at the end of Act 2, and move on to the next stage. When you're playing the game separately as Sonic 3 or Sonic and Knuckles, there are only 6 zones you'll need to clear, and while Sonic is playable in both, Tails is only playable in the former, while Knuckles is only playable in the latter. But when you combine the both of them together, you'll get a total of 12 zones instead, since you'll be playing through each of these zones from both games respectfully. Starting with the zones from Sonic 3, then it segues into Sonic and Knuckles' stages right after. It's also worth mentioning that there isn't a save file in Sonic and Knuckles should you decide to play that game by itself. Each zone consists of 2 acts, with none of them containing a third like before, so they finally got it right with this one. The game also included some brand new shields to play with as well, mainly the elemental shields that I've mentioned earlier. On top of elemental immunity, they come with additional abilities that only Sonic himself can activate whenever the jump button is pressed in midair. Fire makes you completely immune to any flame-based hazards, including lava, and it also gives Sonic an air dash. Lightning magnetizes the rings and brings them to the player, protects them from lightning-based hazards, and gives Sonic the ability to double jump. Finally, the bubble shield will let characters breathe underwater, while Sonic gains the ability to bounce, which can increase its jump height, much like another item that we're all too familiar with in a future title. I should also point out that the shields will cause certain projectiles to bounce off of you, and if you happen to take a dip in a body of water with the lightning or fire elemental shields active, you'll lose them instantly, which makes sense. Though in the lightning shield's case, it destroys any enemy underwater as a result too. The game also now has 3 bonus stages and the special stages where you'll get your Chaos Emeralds. The bonus stages can be entered through the checkpoint after accumulating 30 rings, similar to how it's done in Sonic 2. Upon entering, you'll be taking part in 3 different stages that can appear at random. One consists of a slot machine where you'll farm rings here, just don't get Robotnik. The other 2 being a gumball machine and gravity spheres both serve the same purpose. You'll be farming power-ups and extra lives here with some rings sprinkled in. Special stages, on the other hand, are entered through the giant rings that are hidden in each act, usually the secret rooms. I prefer this method of entering these special stages since there is no longer a ring requirement to enter them, and all you really need to do is go out of your way to explore the levels themselves in order to find each one. Upon Upon entering, you'll be taken to this globe-like layout with blue and red spheres all over the place, and your main objective is to collect all the blue spheres in the stages in order for you to net the Chaos Emerald. Touching a red sphere will send you right back to the main act, yellow spheres are bounce pads that will send you across the map, and the bumpers will have these characters moonwalk instead. As far as controls go, tapping left or right will cause your character to turn, and you can jump on these stages also. Keep in mind, however, that the longer you stay in these stages, the more your character is going to pick up speed. Also, if you happen to collect enough blue spheres outside of a cluster, you'll transform them into rings, which is extremely helpful since it will overall give you more leg room to move around. If you've managed to collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, you'll be able to access Super Sonic just like before, which is activated by hitting the jump button twice instead of once, which is a major improvement. Knuckles also gains access to his super form in the same fashion, which gives him better movement speed and faster wall climbing. Tails unfortunately is the only one who does not get a super form, but you'll still want to collect the Chaos Emeralds, preferably before you clear Launch Base. Doing so will turn all of your Chaos Emeralds into Super Emeralds once you begin the Sonic and Knuckles portion in Mushroom Hill and enter the secret passage Knuckles will reveal to you, unless you're playing as Knuckles, and then you'll just get there automatically if you progress. Collect all the emeralds again and you'll be rewarded with hyper forms, while Tails will gain access to a super form of his own. Sonic is given the flash attack, which kills all enemies on screen with the press of the jump button, and it's also worth noting that if you are holding down any direction while this is activated, he'll jump towards that direction too. So in a sense, it can be used as an air dash or a double jump. Tails gets a Flicky army that will automatically attack anything in sight, and Knuckles gets the Earth Shaker, which triggers every time he flies into a wall and destroys all enemies on screen. To this day, I still say that this is one of the best rewards you could ever give a player for going out of their way to get 100%, and I get such a really high level of satisfaction whenever I achieve such a feat with all 3 of the characters. Look at those juicy save files. As for the levels themselves, these are by far the best stage designs I have ever seen in a Sonic title. The levels definitely complement the speed and platforming aspect that was established in Sonic 2, and I couldn't tell you which levels I didn't enjoy. Well, with the exception of Sandopolis Act 2, but that's for a completely different reason.
Huh? Who's there? What the... a ghost?
Childhood nightmares aside, the stage visuals are gorgeous and easy on the eyes. The foreground and background on these levels complement each other really well, and while we're on the subject of visuals, I really dig Sonic's new sprite work in this game. It's arguably his most polished sprite that really captures the character, and is currently tied as my most favorite sprite work, with Mania being the other contender. The soundtrack for this game is also one of the best in its series. Flying Battery is still an absolute headbanger that I'll never get tired of hearing, as well as many others throughout the game. The one gripe I have with the soundtrack is that I wish the full version of the game didn't ditch that one theme that played when fighting mini bosses during the Sonic 3 portion of the game. For Knuckles' theme, however, I actually do prefer the one that they've replaced with in Sonic and Knuckles. It definitely fits him a lot more, and there's more life to it than, well, just his base version in Sonic 3. Come to think of it, when you're playing Sonic 3 with the Knuckles expansion, there are a few changes that were made aside from its music. Launch Base and Hydrocity were both toned down in terms of difficulty compared to how these stages ran in the original, plus some of the music was strangely cut from the stage transitions. But let's get back on track. Each stage has a gimmick that complemented the stage's design, and wasn't so left field that it interrupted the flow of these levels. Hydrocity, for example, had you moving around pretty quickly for a water stage, especially when the current is tossed tossing you around. Flying Battery allow you to storm Robotnik's airship without having to resort to a lot of cheap pitfall traps. And Carnival Night, which is the most flashiest stage in the game, has gravity tunnels, cannons that shot you into the sky, and these spinning barrels. Alright, as much as I love this game to death, I cannot ignore the biggest roadblock in Sonic's history, arguably next to the infamous ball puzzle in 06. When I replayed this game during my late high school years, I was always puzzled as to why I was never able to beat this game as a kid. The levels themselves can be challenging at times, especially when the game throws a few scenarios where you really need to hustle, otherwise it's instant death. But it wasn't enough to completely halt my progression. Then I get to Carnival Night Zone and slowly the memories start to come back to me. This was a stage I never got past when I was younger, but I couldn't remember the reasons why. It didn't really make sense considering the fact that I also didn't have this issue when playing as Knuckles. Then it all became clear when I got to the very thing that plagued my progress forever: the Barrel of Doom. Knuckles didn't have to deal with this obstacle at all since he took a different route, but if you were playing as Sonic or Tails, they would encounter this thing instead. Shortly after you restore the power in Act 2, you will enter this room where the barrel is blocking the gap you need to access below in order to clear this stage. And on top of this, the door locks behind you, so you can't go anywhere else. What usually ends up happening is that I would try to time my jumps to get the barrel as low as possible to clear the gap, and I would end up dying due to the timer running out. It was also here I realized that all Sonic games up to this point would penalize you if you took 10 minutes to clear a stage. It wasn't until my early college years that I was able to get past this obstacle because a good friend of mine explained to me what I had to do, which was to stand on it and press up and down. Throughout the whole time, the stage gave no indication that this is what you had to do, and the manuals didn't give any hints either to figure things out. Usually when a puzzle like this is presented to a player, the game will show some kind of visual representation on what the player needs to do, or have some kind of minor interaction that gives a player clues on how they can solve the upcoming puzzle in the same level. Games like Mega Man did this extremely well. When you're playing a stage, they would often present a visual to the player or a minor interaction as stated before, to give the player a heads up on what will happen when this scenario takes place. Then it's up to the player to adapt to what they've just learned in order to clear the stage. Carnival Night 2, however, threw all of that out of the window and instead does the opposite. While you do encounter these same spinning barrels, each of them interacts differently from each other, such as being able to crush the player, move in a specific pattern, or slightly bounce whenever the player lands on top of one, which is the closest interaction we gained to solving that puzzle. Not once was there any indication that you can alter the barrel's movement by holding up or down. Plus, no matter how well timed your jumps are, even in rhythm, there is no way the barrel is going to lower itself in order to clear that gap. The only way you would have been able to pick up on this clue is if the player fully commits to holding up and down on the D-pad, which, let's be honest, not too many players thought about doing that at a young age. The Barrel of Doom is so infamous, Yuji Naka himself made a public apology for including that in the game, and Sega had made fun of it several times across other media. My personal favorite is this picture of Omega destroying the barrel in one of the comic strips. Now that is a cathartic sight to see. Despite my harsh criticism on that childhood roadblock, it's not enough to bring the game down as a whole, because truth be told, this was in all honesty one of the few flaws this game truly had. Sure, Sandnopolis Act 2 can be a bit of a pain as Knuckles due to his limited jump height, but it's not enough to strike against the game overall experience. While the game isn't perfect for obvious reasons, it's pretty close to achieving that, and it's clear as day to see why this game has earned its reputation as being the best in its series. It is a meaty game that is not only fun to play, but also offers a very powerful reward for players willing to go that extra mile too. This is also why it saddens me to see that the availability is pretty limited compared to the previous titles we've talked about before. So this is exactly how this video would have gone, but as of recording of this video, which was roughly 2 years ago, Sonic Origins became a thing, and that caused quite a few changes when it comes to the classic series. For starters, all the Sonic titles I've talked about up to this point is now accessible through this collection, those titles being 1, 2, CD, and 3K. Also, these are their updated versions that you can only get on their mobile devices, so now we can enjoy all of the perks that the mobile versions gave us on a console console of our choice, which is about time. The Origins collection even comes with these animated cutscenes that adds more context to the stories that were not presented in the original, and even corrected a few sprite animations when it's needed. Just a bit of a warning though, Sonic 3 and Knuckles has some of its music changed in order for the game to see the light of day. So rest in peace Carnival Night, Ice Cap, and Launch Base's original themes. To further add, Sonic Origins Plus will be coming out later on in June of this year, assuming the game won't get pushed back or anything. That one, for those who are unaware, is going to contain the Game Gear titles, although I wish it was their Master System versions, Sonic Spinball, Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, Knuckles will become a playable character in Sonic CD, and Amy will finally be a playable character in all the games for the first time. So we'll be given a collection that definitely should have been like this from the very beginning, and hopefully fix the issues that players had with the vanilla version. I'd go into detail on what those issues are, but that would make the video longer than I planned for it to be, especially on a subject that's not even supposed to be the main focus. Plus, there are a good chunk of YouTubers out there who covered this topic, so I would advise looking into those if you want more info on that can of worms. If there's one other thing I need to point out is that the Origins collection is the only way to get these older titles on modern consoles now, since Sega pulled them off of the available digital stores, barring the Sega Ages titles for Sonic 1 and 2, which I'd honestly like to see the team behind those two games make their version of Sonic 3K. This is mainly because the team who brought us those titles handled both of those games very well, but I'm not going to be greedy. But with that being said, if you hadn't got Sonic Origins yet, I strongly urge that you wait until the Plus version comes out, as you'll be getting a better deal for your dollar with the new content that the collection is going to be coming with. The vanilla version right now is going for $40, which is not a justifiable price, especially when Capcom released several collection games under their belt around the same price range, and they all come with twice as many games than Origins is giving you. Meanwhile, Origins Plus is going to be coming out with both a digital and a physical version of the game with the same $40 price tag, and for those who already own a vanilla copy of the game can upgrade it for $10. Personally, I say that upgrade should be free for all of those who already own the game, but I digress. But in the event you don't want any of those and you don't mind doing a little bit of digging around on the internet, and if you have enough confidence in your skills on a PC, I can name 2 ROM hacks that can provide you with a definitive Sonic 3K experience. Those ROM hacks being Sonic 3 Complete and Sonic 3 Air, the Air being an abbreviation for Angel Island Revisited. Sonic 3 Complete gives the players the ability to play Sonic 3K with a lot of customizable options, such as giving Sonic his super peel out, changing his sprite, changing which soundtrack will play on some levels, and the list will go on. Meanwhile, Sonic 3 Air provides you with similar features, along with giving you a more definitive experience with the game due to having proper HD scaling, screen filters, a remastered soundtrack done by DJ Spindash, and even touched up on a number of things like playing through the special stages in 60 frames. The game even comes with achievements for all you achievement hunters out there, and these achievements can reward your efforts with some additional features. The big major downer with Sonic 3 Air is that you need to have the Steam version of Sonic 3K in order to play it, mainly because the modders do not want to support piracy in any form and would prefer players to have their own legal copy. Unfortunately, Sega has delisted that game from Steam. Thankfully, after doing a little bit of research right on their main webpage, there are a few alternative legal methods for you to still experience this ROM hack if you're willing to go through the extra steps needed to do so. But if you don't have time for any of that, or you're not tech savvy enough to perform these steps, then your only other option is Origins Plus, which I am aware that's probably not going to sit too well with everybody. Sonic 3K is a timeless classic that never gets old. The game holds up super well even by today's standards, and it rightfully earned its title as being the best Sonic game, period. And this is coming from someone whose #1 Sonic title is Unleashed. But that about wraps up this video. If you like what you saw, feel free to hit me with that siggity sub and check out my other videos while you're here. Hope I get to see y'all in the next one. Later!